Hi, everybody, and welcome to SF Doc Fest. We're so excited to have the filmmakers join us today for our Spaces uh, digital shorts program. Welcome to our filmmakers. I'm Sarah Marie Flores. I curate the shorts programs here at Doc Fest. So excited to have everyone joining us today. I would love to kick things off by having our filmmakers introduce themselves. Let us know what your role was on the film and what the genesis of the story was. So how did you become involved, or what made you want to tell this story? And we'll kick things off with Michael. Hi, Michael.
Oh, hi. Mike McCourt, director and producer for the film Ripple. And in short, the film came to me. I'm a commercial director, and I happened to meet Ray Ripple on a project, and we got to know each other. And as she started to unfold her story, it became evident that there was something more to it. And it's what brought us together. The journey of what everyone has just watched is the efforts of probably 9 months of putting the film together.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Hi, Nicholas.
Hi, great to meet you. I'm Nicholas Mayberg. I'm a film director, mainly working in the commercial world, living in Berlin. And yeah, I also directed on the short film Alfred. And so the whole thing happened basically, I'm a big nature and animal lover. I joined this Orca expedition group in Norway once, and I wanted to come back to make a project out of it, combining the nature, the animals, and the storytelling. And through doing research, we found this pretty interesting person called Alfred. And yeah, we did this documentary about him.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, Anaki. I do have to say, I'm a former projectionist. The
Oh,
theater that we show our festival in is the Roxy in San Francisco, which is a historic movie theater. It was built between 1909 and 1913.
uh-huh.
I grew up in movie theaters. So
Wow.
your film really, really touched me, especially as somebody that has a deep reverence for the Church of Cinema and for the act of projecting. So,
Wow.
anyways, introduce yourself, do all the things. I just had to add that little tidbit in there.
Well, that's a great introduction, by the way. But my name is Iñaki Oñate. I am from Quito, Ecuador. This documentary was shot in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, because I lived there for 12 years. I studied there and I worked there. After the pandemic, I came back to Ecuador, which is the place where I was born. But this short film is, like you said, is a homage to film theaters and film projectionists. And the project actually dates back to 2012, which is when I discovered this film projectionist in Buenos Aires. I wanted to investigate about this world, and I went to ask in film theaters if I could interview the projectionist, and it was impossible, almost impossible. And the last option I went to was this guy, and it was like this mystery unfolding. And this gave birth to the short film that you saw or you're about to see. So thank you for
Awesome.
including it in your festival.
Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Rishi. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me and having our film. I'm Rishi Sadia. I'm producer, drone pilot, and general, story consultant sounding board on Hazelwood Alive. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the genesis of this project is me and the director and the cinematographer, and another partner of ours. So we have a small independent production company in Pittsburgh, and we do a lot of documentaries. And our director, Balint, has a long-standing ties to the neighborhood. You saw Hazelwood in the film. He's been going to church there and has friends there, in the Hungarian church and community in Hazelwood. And this particular film started because Balint's always been, had an affinity for that neighborhood, and he's had another film that he's been working on kind of long term about the neighborhood. But we were introduced to the main character, Jaquay, because of a project we were originally commissioned to do, and then that fell through. But since we met Jaquay, Balint was like, well, this man is like, doing a lot to keep the history alive. And, you know, Balan and Jaquay definitely immediately hit it off because they both obviously have a reverence and a care about the history of the neighborhood and the community. And because of that, decided to make a film about Jaquay and his efforts to preserve neighborhood history and also help with the revitalization.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Michael, I would love to come back to you to kind of talk about your relationship with Ray and how you got to a place of telling this particular story, because it is really intimate and revealing. And when you finally land at like this expression of art, like how did you approach telling such a personal story and then highlighting the art around it?
So, you know, when I met Ray, she obviously, you'll see in the film that she works and fabricates in metal and chops up cars, and she's just this force of power. She just tackles things, and I just grew a great deal of strength from her when I first met her. But then she started to lay out kind of the troubled past she had growing up, and it got pretty dark in the early conversations of like some of the things that she had experienced. And what the film shows is probably 5% of what I call a much deeper onion to her story. But what I wanted to do was make more of something that felt like a portrait piece that gave you a glimpse into her world. And I wanted to approach it with, you know, I have a great love for cinematography, and I wanted to wrap her story in this like beauty, that everything that you saw was beautiful and very personal and intimate. And it was a course of 6 months of just having conversations with her and building this level of trust. And so by the time we got to be together in person, we started to develop the way in which I was going to interview her, the paces, and then we built this kind of safe system. So if there was a point where there was a kill switch, we had signs that she can give. And I think by creating this kind of language between the two of us, she started to reveal things on camera that she hadn't said in some time. So it was a really personal and emotional kind of journey in those days that we filmed. The film was only shot in 3 days, and I funded everything on myself. You know, it's been, I think we completed it in August of last year, and it's now going through the festival circuit. But Ray and I from this have become, I like to say, lifelong friends. So we continue to stay in each other's lives, and I felt like the time that we both put into this together, I think in order to go to that really personal space, something comes out of that, and I think it's like a sister brotherhood that we'll probably enjoy for the rest of our lives. So it was what an adventure, and super thankful to be a part of this festival.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.
You're welcome.
Nicholas, one thing that really strikes me is that we don't often talk about the oppression of indigenous cultures outside of developing nations and the United States. How did you kind of focus in on the Sami culture aspect of Alfred's story? Was this something that you were learning as you were creating the film, and what did it mean to include that storyline within your work?
Yeah, even though we did some research before and knew that there is this person, Alfred, existing on this peninsula, we didn't had like a commitment or anything from him, or like actually contact with him to travel there knowing, okay, we're gonna do this portrait about him. So basically, we have this small production company. It's called Black Corridor. My best friend Hannes Höhn and me, and so it was basically just DP Peter Kempf traveling with me to the island and trying our best to get in contact with him. And it wasn't easy in the beginning because as he's living almost lonely on this island, a half island, he's not used to talk to people too much. So it was I wasn't actually not I wasn't able to create a proper storyline, even though for sure it's a documentary. But usually you might think about, okay, in what direction should the whole thing develop somehow, or what do we want to point out? But it was more like getting to know him, learning from him, and so I didn't even knew from the very beginning that he's part of the Sami culture, and for sure this was quite interesting to see how the whole that they are still to this day like trying to in Norway, trying to get rid of the Sami people or the culture itself, how much it was affecting him in maybe also trying to avoid people getting in contact with people, because like kids growing up being part of the Sami culture, it's still like it was crazy for me to see that to this day they are still not accepted in a land like Norway, where you would think like it's so super modern, and they have those super modern electric cars and everything, but that this happens till this day. So yeah, this was something that we learned, and it was hard to see that he's suffering from it that much still.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I think the more that we shine a light on these cultures that we don't often get to know of, often because governments want to kind of hide or they're ashamed of the past, it's really important to have films like this. So I really appreciate you including it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being part of it. Festival.
Iñaki, I would love to talk about your visual approach to your film. I mean, you know, like movie theaters, well, I love them.
Yeah.
And they can be beautiful, right? They're a static thing, right? They're the machine to realize the dreams, and not often the thing that we approach from a visual perspective. How did you approach shooting your film and putting it together?
Well, like I told you in the introduction, the project started in 2012 because I've always been interested in the world of projection. And I am 35 years old, so I am in a generation that kind of tasted the last bits of that world, you know, in the 90s. You still had to look at the newspaper to see the projections, the film venues and all of that. So I kind of felt nostalgic without being 100% part of that world. I am from the digital era, but I felt I had to, because of that, I was interested in knowing how it was before all of this digital thing came, right? So I went to see a film projectionist. I interviewed him with my handy camera. I always use my handy camera to make my documentaries. You know, it makes things more personal, more intimate. And out of that, I shot, after I interviewed him, I shot a fiction short film about the things he told me, right? His experiences. And after that, I did this documentary. So it was like a whole process that took years. The actual film projectionist that I'm mentioning now, he left, he doesn't work in it anymore. He became like a security guard in a evangelical church, which I mentioned because in Buenos Aires, you see a lot of old movie theaters that are turned into evangelical churches, you know. So that's kind of the process. That's where the genesis came. It was like this curiosity of this world that seemed a little bit far from me, but it's still very interesting, you know.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. Rishi, I would like to talk to you about collaborative filmmaking and community. I think that obviously you worked with like a really tight-knit team in creating this, but you're also telling a story about a community that is trying to shine light on what their revitalization efforts have been. Can you talk about what it was like working within your team and how that kind of mirrored the team of the community?
Sure. Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, I mean, we have a small team here, Mohari Media, and this project was very just independent. We just sort of did it ourselves, and most of it was just Bound and stuff, no director and cinematographer, just by themselves with Jaquay. So we also developed like a good relationship working with Jaquay, as you often have to do with your documentary subjects. But within our team, I mean, I think there was to point out earlier, like even though it's a documentary, like there was a lot of sort of writing and sort of thinking through the process. And Bound used me and Stefano and others as like a sounding board to kind of think through like what the act structure would be. And then yeah, I mean the collaboration in the field and in the editing just kind of comes out of, I think we've been doing a lot of different projects together now for a few years. And yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it mirrors what the community is doing as well, but we'd like to think it does. I think a lot of our projects end up being like sort of community based or with a lot of nonprofits. So we do end up kind of working in a lot of those fields, a lot of those spaces where it's people truly doing it for the passion, like documentary is not a very like, you're not doing it for the lucrative nature of it per se. So I think that maybe kind of mirrors some of the stuff that we're covering, especially in this case with Jaquay and what he does with the Historical Society. I think that element of it definitely is mirrored because, you're doing it for the craft and for the passion and really for just like featuring their stories, like Jaquay's story and the stories of these buildings and these places that he's taking you to. But really, it was like Bound and Stefano. They were freezing, and those are very cold days. I was like, oh, when it's nice, then I flew the drone when it was like the spring weather. But there was a lot of bonding going on too, just from how cold it was out there in the snow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's all the time we have for our Q&A today. Thank you so much to our filmmakers for joining us and to our audience for tuning in. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.